I am the greatest.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
You won't do shit. Just stick and move. And making you understand. Now stick and move. Keep your hands up.
Welcome to a new episode of the Stick and Move podcast. I'm your host, Trey, and today we're talking about the top 3 most annoying, worst boxing trends currently going on in the boxing world. And before I start off, I just want to say go ahead and like and subscribe, and let's just get right into it. So I thought about this long and clear, and there were a couple of topics I felt that deserve to be on this list. I kind of wish this was a top 5. Top 5 lists are coming soon, by the way. We're just trying to get to a goal, and then we're going to move these top 3s to top 5s eventually. But my number 3 for the top 3 worst boxing trends is timing fights. Look, we all know the iconic one between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Look, whether you want to put the blame on Pac or you want to put the blame on Mayweather, this kind of started the trend. I mean, look, it took 7 years for us to get Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather to get in there. So a lot of people have speculated that Floyd Mayweather purposely waited out Manny Pacquiao because when Manny Pacquiao was chopping heads, he wanted nothing to do with it, especially his beating when he gave to Margarito at the time, who was one of the most awkward fighting boogeymen of the division, and Floyd was pushing that off, okay, as much as possible. Then on the other side, right, let's call it on both sides. Mayweather had huge speculation that Manny Pacquiao was on roids, and even though that has never been proven, uh, a lot of people, I mean, there were people saying that, well, why doesn't he just get tested the way that Mayweather wants him to get tested by the Olympic style kind of testing? And Manny Pacquiao, there was a lot of push forth and pushing back and forth that led to this 7-year delay. The promoting, everything that was trying to get this fight going that we wanted for so long, when both of these boxers were at their peak, was not there. It never happened. Manny Pacquiao would eventually get that fatal blow knockout by Marquez. He would have that controversial loss to Timothy Bradley. And by the time he moved up to 147 at the welterweight division, Manny Pacquiao, his power didn't really translate anymore. His speed didn't really translate anymore to that division. And his power was pretty much depleted by that point, and he wasn't the same boxer anymore. And of course, Floyd Mayweather, would bounce on that. Now, I'm one of those boxers that when they actually fought 7 years later, it was a closer fight than we think. But I just wish we would have happened. Now, let's take that to modern times. You know, Crawford and Spence took 5 years. Now, granted, Spence had that automobile accident that altered and shifted the boxing world community. I've said this on multiple occasions um, throughout this podcast history. I was teaching in Dallas. I was a teacher in Dallas and specifically in South Oak Cliff when that accident happened. And it delayed a lot of things. We thought we were going to get Spence. We thought we were going to get Spence and Thurman, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Um, Spence was coming up. He was a awkward, great fundamental boxer with a phenomenal stiff jab, and Crawford was coming up in the division at the time. Yeah, I've had my beefs with Crawford because I think his resume is lackluster. Technically a phenomenal fighter, but his resume is just straight garbage, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I mean, I even remember Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis being an issue back in the days. Supposedly, they were going to do a big old round tournament between Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe, and then I think it was going to be Lennox Lewis and Razor Ruddock or Ray Mercer. I could remember. I don't remember. But, you know, when the fight was about to happen between Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis, Rocky Newman, who was a promoter for Riddick Bowe, would lowball the offer, and just the fight never happened. We never saw. So it goes before Mayweather. It goes before Riddick Bowe as well. And look, we're seeing it now with Canelo and Benavidez. Everybody wants to see the legend, the guy right behind me, in Canelo fighting Benavidez. And a lot of people are saying if he does not fight Benavidez, everything that Canelo has done has meant absolutely nothing. Take it from me, from a guy that's a big Canelo fan, because where I'm from, we watched Canelo grow up from when he was a 15-year-old boxer here at the border where Mexico is to becoming the legend that he is now. My theory is if it doesn't happen this year, I honestly think that it is true. I don't think Canelo cares. Not that he wants, but cares about fighting Benavidez. And I've said this a few episodes back. I honestly think Canelo sleeps like a baby. He's not one of these boxers that is dreaming of that big fight with Benavidez. I think he's sleeping well. I honestly think he doesn't care if his legacy is ruined to a couple of people. He might be fine with it. And guys, I think if he's fine with his legacy being what it is with or without Benavidez on the resume, I think we should move on. We should move on. Now, another theory I might have, I think after his loss to Bivol, he's a little bit more calculated. I honestly think that, I mean, you gotta realize he was on a what, 8-year tear, going undefeated. He has some controversial fights in between with Triple G and Lara and stuff like that, but he was the main face of boxing since Triple G won. And I think that when he got into the ring of Bivol, he took on a little too much than he was prepared for. He was outsized in height and weight, and it was just a big mismatch physically. And I think he realized then that maybe he is not as an immortal boxer as he thought, that he should have stayed at 168. In my opinion, I kind of think that he's underweight. I think he should go back down to 160. I think that's where you're gonna get those knockouts. He's not getting them as much at 168. I think he has that Pacquiao feel where Pacquiao went to welterweight and his power just didn't translate anymore. I think that's what Canelo's going through as well, even though he did have early success. Timing fights is just, unfortunately, it's been highlighted within the past 10 plus years with the Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather ordeal, and that was nauseating. But it still goes on. We'll see. As far as Canelo Benavidez, if it doesn't even happen, then it shouldn't even be talked about anymore. As far as these timing fights categories, guys, in the comments, go ahead and give me some examples as well on the comments of other fights that were just timed out too long. Tell me what you guys think. All right, my number two is boxers that are fighting once a year, if not every other year. Look, if you look at Bud Crawford's record, I'm going straight to Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford, since 2019, the last time he fought twice a year, has literally only fought once a year. He fought in 2020 to Kell Brook, knocked him out in the TKO in the fourth round. He beats Sean Porter in 2021. He fights David Vanessian in 2022, scrub. He fights Earl Spence in 2023, and now 13 months later, he's fighting Israel Madrimov, which who knows, might be he's supposedly a dangerous fighter. And look, as a guy that is pretty much on everybody's top one or number two pound for pound, I don't think he deserves it just based on his inactivity. Is he technically a very skilled boxer? Yes, but look at this lousy record. On my last co-host Sam, he would always point out that he would fight the scrubs or the leftovers of Earl Spence. Earl Spence took on the young lions when they were coming up, and he would break them down just so Terrence Crawford can pick up the leftovers. Is that part of the? Does that go to my number three of timing fights? Maybe that's the genius behind it. But look, Terrence Crawford is 36 years old. Okay, he only has a few years left, if not a year or two left. I mean, yes, he fights once a year, so he is fresh. I mean, he's not fighting two or three times, and I get it. The days of fighting three, four, five, six plus times a year are pretty much over. I get it. But can he at least get on the Canelo schedule where he fights two times a year? Pick the holidays, man. It could be, I don't know, November and then once in April or something like that. Can he give us a little? If you want to be the face of boxing, you got to give us a little bit more activity. Now, look, was his clash with Errol Spence world class? His performance, absolutely. But look, this was a beaten down Errol Spence. Ugas almost knocked him out. Danny Garcia had his way with them at certain points of that fight. Look, he was not the same boxer anymore. Goes back to my number three, Crawford and Spence taking fight. If this fight would have happened before his accident, could have been a different outcome. Maybe Terrence Crawford still would have won, but maybe it would have looked a little bit better where Errol Spence was a little bit more competitive. I just want these boxers to fight months a year. And look, he's not the only one. I'll go to Andy Ruiz. That guy's even worse, and it bothers me. What is going on with Andy Ruiz on in his record? 35-2 with 22 knockouts. This guy, very annoyingly so, shocks the world when he beats Anthony Joshua in 2019. Actually gives him a rematch within a few months later, loses the division. Technically, he loses his heavyweight belt, sorry. Technically, he should have a rematch after that, but then COVID happens, takes a year off. He loses all this weight. He starts training with Eddie Reynoso and Canelo team, and he just doesn't want to fight. In 2021, he fights an old, aged out Chris Ariola, and because of his inactivity and lack of skill, where he could be developing his craft a little bit better now that he has lost weight and trying to learning how to fight was what was it, a 40 or 50 to 60 pound loss? I mean, when you lose that kind of weight, you're a different boxer. You get different, your body acclimates differently. And he needs tune-up fights at least to know how to use his body in the newest physical form. And here he is fighting once a year against Chris Ariola. They go the distance. Yeah, I'll admit that Reese had the win on that, but Ariola put up a good show. Which Ariola, you want to talk about inactivity? Same thing for him, and he put up a good show. He waits to fight another year against Luis Ortiz, a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken. And ever since then, in 2022, he hasn't fought. He has a fight coming up in August. I think he's on one of the main cards against Jarrell Miller. I mean, look, we just need activity in the ring, guys. Especially for a guy like Ortiz, a guy who's going up and down in weight. That's when you need to stay in training. That's when you got to stay crisp. That's when you got to stay active. Activity matters when it comes to legacy, man. He had the opportunity. He was the first Mexican heavyweight champ, and as a proud Mexicano as myself, for him to fall apart. I mean, I get it. He was partying afterwards, and he wasn't ready for the rematch. Okay, fine. I could live with that. But pretty much being semi-retired. Come on, man. Where's that sangre, that blood? I also have here on my notes, Wilder. Ever since his first bout with Tyson Fury, he was never really the same anymore. I mean, look, he goes to war. I mean, in 2018, he fights twice. He fights Ortiz. He fights Fury. 2017, fights twice. 16 and 15. Every year, he's fighting at least twice. I could live with that. I mean, are we gonna get the name of boxing? I mean, at this time, Wilder was one of the faces of boxing. Are we gonna get these guys to fight 3 or 4 times in 12 to 18 months span, like Canelo did when he was trying to get undisputed at 168? That was a wonderful time. He even did it during COVID. But look, after Tyson Fury, that first bout in 2018, he was just not the same boxer anymore. Fight He would fight Dominic Breazeale, one of the greatest first round knockouts of all time, Luis Ortiz, and then after that, after the TKO, the second bout, after that it was once a year. Tyson Fury 2021, Hellenius 2022, Joseph Parker 2023. These guys that have these opportunities to rebound and show us, okay, fine, I went down, let me go back in. And look, I know I talk a lot about Canelo on this podcast, and it could get annoying at times. I understand. But look, after his loss to Mayweather, he came back. He fought. He kept fighting. Fought Angulo, fought Lara, controversial decision. Goes to fight the guy that nobody wanted to fight, that everybody wanted to challenge Trout. He does it. He fights Triple G, controversial. Most these boxers that I'm talking about, Wilder, they would have taken a break after a fight such as him and Triple G. He fights him again. He goes back. He tries to claim 168. He loses to Bivol and very badly. I think that fight only had Canelo winning 1 or 2 rounds, maybe three tops. And what does Canelo do? He gets back on the train. He keeps fighting again. I mean, at least these guys, they're fighting. Canelo, I mean, uh, they're being active. In a way, is active. You know, he hasn't lost, but he's active. You know, he's fighting multiple times a year. Give us something. Then there's like Keith Thurman. I mean, after he loses to Pacquiao, he literally doesn't fight for almost 3 years later when he fights Mario Barrios. I mean, and even then, I mean, yeah, he dominated that fight, but that goes to show you that, I mean, I know he was dealing with injuries and stuff like that, but he just gotta show me. He was one time the champ, man. And I don't know. It's borderline me throwing in Thurman in there as another boxer that Manny Pacquiao ended a career on. He hit the canvas once in that first round. It's like he saw a ghost and he just didn't want to fight anymore. I don't know. That's just me. I know that the COVID thing was a big deal as well. I get it. I'm not going to knock you for missing time on COVID, but I'll put you this way: boxing and the combat sports, they're the ones figuring it out at the time. Yeah, were the coliseums empty and stuff like that? Yes, due to protocols, but they were active. Canelo fought during that time. All the greats were fighting during that time. That's why I have my number two. Boxers taking a year off. Now, my number one is protecting that O. How protecting that O has gotten ridiculous. And by those that people that don't know what O means, people that don't want to lose their undefeated record. Um, or they'll calculate their fight to where, kind of like timing their fight to where they'll fight a bunch of second tier fighters or see a great name that has a bad loss, or they see a flaw and then they're like, all right, now let's go in for the challenge. Big names, guys, in a way. People say he's protecting his own. I don't think he is. I think he's doing exactly what he does. He's on pace. He's already gone up multiple classes. People are asking him to go up another 2 more classes to fight Gervonta Tank Davis, who's another boxer who's protecting his own. Yes, his promoter is Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather perfected that craft, perfected the art of why the O is so important. 50-0, which supposedly is next. Um, Supposedly he's gonna have another bout where it's gonna count against his record. But look, protecting that O never was a thing. It was never a thing growing up. We didn't care if boxers were undefeated or if they lost. I mean, it was cool when you saw two undefeated boxers fight each other. I remember when De La Hoya fought Trinidad, and we were like, "Oh my God, we got to watch that fight." And people, that's why it's one of the all-time highest selling pay-per-views, because we wanted to see who they were willing to risk it all, both in their primes. And now with boxers not willing to fight to risk their Crawford and Spence waiting 5 years. Pacquiao already lost, but Mayweather timing out, goes back to my number three. Pacquiao, I mean, he could have gone up a class to fight Paul Williams. Supposedly that was the conversation, but he wanted nothing to do with the southpaw and the length of Paul Williams. I mean, look, to be great, you got to risk it all. And what Tank Davis is doing is it's straight trash, man. And look, and he's fighting these second tier boxers like Gamboa, Leo Santa Cruz, even though I technically had Santa Cruz winning that fight until he got knocked out. Mario Varios, Isaac Cruz, Romero, Hector Luis Castillo. These are all second, third tier boxers. This guy, he wants to be the face of boxing, yet this is the class that he's fighting. He dehydrates the living hell out of Ryan Garcia, which we'll talk about in a second. And now he's fighting a viable opponent in Frank Martin, undefeated. So we're gonna see an O go there. But in all retrospect, everything that these boxers are doing today is just, I don't even know what to say. And then right now, Crawford, I mean, I don't know if his upcoming fight is going to be that much of a challenge. I will admit he's very skilled. Tank Davis is very skilled, which is why are they not risking it all? Well, don't they want to show off their skill, that to a point where we're undefeated and we're going to take on all comers? Look, just 2 decades earlier, Mosley, De La Hoya, Trinidad, Roy Jones Jr., they were undefeated. They kept fighting. They fought the big names that they had to. Oscar De La Hoya, he didn't have to fight Trinidad, but he wanted to because it was Mexico versus Puerto Rico. Let's risk our records. Let's go for it. I'm the golden boy. Your Tito. Let's fight in the middle of the ring. Let's give the people what they want. We want to see what they got. And today's boxers, I'm not gonna blame Floyd Mayweather on the undefeated O thing. Um, what Floyd Mayweather did on that front was simply he romanticized the zero. 50 and O. It's crisp. It's borderline perfect. Was he I will say this with about Mayweather. What that did was it created a new category of, or I would say this, with that 50 and 0, what it did was create a division within boxing opinions. You are not great if you have a loss on your record. I mean, guys, do you realize? Let's look at the Mount Rushmore here. We got Muhammad Ali with 5 losses. We got Larry Holmes, who, famously lost to Mike Tyson. He would finish with 60. I'm sorry, with 6 losses, 69 wins. I mean, George Foreman had the big loss, to Muhammad Ali, yet they kept fighting. It's not like their career was over. I think there's this big fear or this big sentiment that if you lose that O, you can never be on the top 5, top 10 greatest of all time. If Davis and Crawford are scared, or even Inoue, which I think Inoue is a unique situation, I don't think he care. People say he cannot be great unless he comes to America. I don't think he needs America. You see those stadiums in Japan? Believe me, he is up there. I brought this up before as the face of. He's probably one of the most iconic faces in all of Japan, along with Shohei Ohtani, maybe even bigger. And I don't think he cares. So I think, in a weird way, is a outlier in this situation. But look, whether it's Crawford, Boots, Tank Davis, all these guys that are fighting to keep their O. Guys, the legacy, man. The legacy. doesn't care about the losses. Look, there's very few people that say Floyd Mayweather is the greatest, and he's 50-0. Most people would say it's Muhammad Ali. Most people would say it's Sugar Ray Leonard. Most people would say that it's Sugar Ray Robinson. Most people would say it's Joe Louis, all with losses, with the exception of Floyd Mayweather, Rocky Marciano. And even now, 50 years later, after Marciano, 6 years later, actually, after Marciano already uh, put up put up the gloves, now they're discrediting him. What are we going to do 50 years from now? We're going to discredit Floyd Mayweather's 50-0 record, looking at his cherry picking. Look, get into the fights, fight the names. That's the legacy. That's what's going to look good on the resume. Look, I can go back to Canelo. I know you guys hate this, but look, 10, 20, what he is doing is building a legacy for the future. When you look at his legacy and you see that he fought numerous undefeated champions as a defeated boxer and defeated them all, names that have cachet, like the 168 division, fighting Triple G 3 times, fighting Lara, who was a scary, awkward Cuban fighter, losing to Mayweather. Those are names, man, that are gonna live on. Fighting a Bivol that was undefeated. Did he lose? Yes. But you know what makes it nice and romantic, makes that record nice and spicy and gorgeous, is that he was willing to risk it. He was willing to risk it to go all the way. But what about Benavidez? Well, what about it? He's already done enough. And if he feels like he's okay with it, it's time to move on. And you know what? Benavidez is moving on. He's going to 175. And I think that's a great idea. Because if he goes to 175 and he fights Bivol and he beats Bivol, then guess what? Now the pressure's on Canelo. Oh, well, now people are going to say Benavidez is a better boxer because he beat the guy that Canelo, and so on. The point of the story is it's okay to risk it. And I love that Bivol is fighting Better Be It. I know there was the injury, Better Be It, but the fight's going to go on. That's awesome. Tyson Fury and Usyk, they were both willing to risk it. And look, they gave us a classic. Guys, enough with the second tier. You're not fooling anybody, Crawford, Javante Tank Davis. I know I'm leaving plenty out. I'm just drawing a blank. You guys are not fooling anybody. Get into the ring. You win. Imagine winning, risking your O, and actually beating top tier boxers. How better that O is, instead of aging them out or waiting for them to be defeated. Just go for it, man. Go for it. So, other annoying traits or worst boxing trends that I did not like is the rehydration clauses. I thought about that, especially with the whole Ryan Garcia with Tank Davis thing, and then Devin Haney blowing up as well. There's Benavidez that goes from 160 away in at 168, and then fight night miraculous. I don't even know how it's possible. Goes from 168 to over 200 pounds. The famous one, Sugar Ray Leonard and Duran. Duran was over 200 pounds, and in a few months goes from 200 to 147 to fight, or I was 147, 154. I don't remember. Um, so rehydration was another one. People hating on tune-up fights. I think tune-up fights need to come back. If you're moving up classes, we got to understand that that the weight is an issue, and you need to be able to calculate and adjust um, your weight when it comes to picking your fight. So I'm okay with tune-up fights, especially if you're moving up or down in classes. Another one I had, let's see here. Oh, mandatory fights. People tend to not understand mandatory fights. Like, why is this boxer fighting a mandatory? Why does he just fight the biggest name? I mean, with these sanctioning bodies of these belts, there's all these technicalities. I know Usyk is about to lose his belt if he doesn't fight the mandatory, but he wants to make an exception to fight. I don't know. And then there's Canelo, plenty of like his fight with Yodrum. That was a mandatory. He had to take it, guys. Yes, can he vacate it? Why? Why? I mean, we got to start being more understanding of what these priorities are to boxers. For some of them, it's to stay unified. For some of them, it's to fight the top names. For some of them, it's to protect that O. For some of them, is to time the fights. Either or. But these are boxing trends that I wish would get out. Go ahead and leave in the comments. Tell me which trends that you guys cannot stand in the boxing community currently right now. Go ahead and leave a like. Go ahead and comment. Subscribe. I'll respond to you guys as much as possible. And don't forget to stick and move, baby.
I am the greatest.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
You won't do shit with me now. Just stick and move. And waking you up and saying, now stick and move.